There is the same training for each of the intents which are identified, which are defined within this particular bot. It can also be done from the NLP tab of the user intent node. So once you open a particular task and open the properties window of this particular user intent node, you will see we have a tab over there which is called the NLP properties. And if you click on this particular tab, the first section over there is the machine learning section. So you can provide your training utterances here as well. All these training utterances are for this particular task. And then once you provide it, you can click on the train button in order to start the training of the NLP engine. But you cannot do the NER tagging from here. So for the NER tagging part, you have to go back to the NL training section and do the NER tagging. That improves the performance of the ML engine, because it knows that within an utterance, what are the positions that it will look for a possible entity value. Okay. The other thing that controls whether entity values will be extracted from the utterance of the user or not depends on the instance property of a given entity. So if you come to the entity node and go to the instance property of the entities, you will see within that you have something called the entity extraction. So within this entity extraction, you can see evaluate unused text from previous utterance. So whatever utterance is coming from the user, when your bot reaches a particular entity, it is going to evaluate that utterance and see if there is any value in that particular utterance which matches with this particular entity type. And if it matches, it is going to extract that value and store it within the entity and mark that value as used up. So the next time in the same conversation, if there is some other entity which is of the same type, it will not be allowed to use that same value because it has been marked as used up by a previous entity. Okay, so this way, because of this particular extraction logic, even without any training, you will see if there are entity values in the utterance of the user, that value is picked up and stored into the respective entity. The other entity extraction logics that you have over here is evaluate unused text and text used for extracting entities from the previous utterance. So if you have multiple entities of the same type within your task, and you want the same value from the user utterance to populate all these entities repeatedly, so then you can go in for the next option. So after a value is used for populating one of the entities, it will not be marked as used up. Okay, so it will just remain as it is. So when the bot comes to the next entity of the same type, the same value will be reused to populate that particular entity once again. It's a very special use case where you want to do it. And the third one says, do not evaluate previous utterances and explicitly prompt. So that means even if the user provides the value of the entity within the utterance, in spite of that, the bot is not going to fetch the value from the user utterance, but will prompt for the value of that entity when that entity comes into the context. The default is it will always pick up from that particular from the utterance, populate that entity if it matches with the entity type, and mark that value as used up. Okay, so this is the position from where it controls whether entity extraction will take place from the user utterance or not. And to help this extraction, you can go in for the NER tagging, where when you are providing the sample utterances or training utterances with NER tagging, you tag those values with the possible entities. Okay, so that is how you can train the ML engine. Any questions on this?